All right. So for the price control problem, I'm going to go ahead and draw this out. I want to make sure you always have it here and to have $2 and $6 because they're different quantities. On the demand side, it tells me at a price of $2, people are going to want to buy 160. So I'm going to put the 160 out here, and that'll be my first point. And we'll go to 120. When I graph, I end up with my demand curve. This is my supply curve, and what I see, if I can kind of line these up, is that at a price of 4, the market is in equilibrium with quantity equal to 80. All right. So on the exam, the first part it says is graph the supply and demand curves. Be sure to label the axes, price, and quantity. Quantity, supply, and demand. Using the table above, state if the statement is true or false, and explain why you selected the answer, or if you a price ceiling of 70 would not be binding, right? So if I had a price ceiling of 70, step 1, you always want to draw it. Step 2, call it what it is, right? It's the ceiling. What does a ceiling mean? Step 2, put in your arrow. And so a ceiling says that the price cannot go above it. So it means the price has to go below. So step 3, you want to compare the equilibrium price to the ceiling. So everything down here is okay. Everything above is not. So is the equilibrium price of 4 below the ceiling? Meaning, does 4 violate the ceiling? No, it does not. So that means that a ceiling of $70 is not binding. Also, if you notice, if your ceiling is above you, kind of think about like this. Instead of doing an arrow, draw a little person. Right? If the ceiling is above that person, we'll stick figure. Is it a problem? No, it's not. So that makes it non-binding. But if it had been a $70 floor, all right, draw the person above the floor, right? Or you could say a floor means that the price has to be, it doesn't have to be a $70 price, but it has to be above that, right? This would be binding because what it says is you can have any price in the world as long as it is above $70. Because $4 is not above 70, then this would be binding. All right. So again, a price ceiling of 70 is non-binding, right? A price floor of 90 would be binding, right? So 90, step 1, draw the line. Step 2, label it. This is a floor. Step 3, put your arrow in, right? What's the okay area? So if this is a floor, it says you can have any price in the world, but the price must be above that price. And so if this is a $90 price floor, then it is binding. It means that quantity supplied will not equal quantity demanded, and you will have some sort of disequilibrium. I use the 70 and the 90 only because I wanted you to think about things when you're thinking about price floors and price ceilings. It does not mean you have to charge that price. It just means does fit into the okay area. Yes. All right. So number A, the answer is a price ceiling would not be binding, and B, a price floor of 90 would be binding is true. Number 3, determine a price where there's a binding ceiling or a binding floor. So if I'm going to do a binding ceiling, a ceiling has to be below the equilibrium to be binding. So I'm going to pick the price of $3. Step 1, draw it. Step 2, write the word ceiling. Step 3, where does that mean? That means the price could be anything, but it must be below the 3. All right. Next step, compare the equilibrium to the ceiling. If the equilibrium is out, this is the okay area. If it is underneath there, then that means that loss. The concept of deadlight loss, according to the book, is just the surplus that would have been had by consumers and producers if they were allowed to sell. So instead of having 80 units being sold, I'm only going to have the price of 3. This number is going to be 40. All right, and this number here is going to be 120. So at a price of $3, suppliers are going to want to supply less. And so their quantity supply, the price went down, the quantity supply is going to go down, but at the same time, the number of buyers, because the price has gone down, into the market. And 80 units and capturing all of the consumer surplus from year to year to year, you're only going to capture part of that surplus. And that part of that surplus means that these units here, 40 to 80 never got sold. So this right here becomes dead weight loss. And if I needed to figure out what that number is, I can look at, I'm trying to figure out what is the X and what is Y here. All right, that area there. And so if I know this point at 40, I know that at a quantity supplied of 40, I know that suppliers are going to have a price of 120 here. So this is a 5. So to figure that area out, that's a triangle. You're going to take 1/2. The height of this is 5. Minus this 3 here. And then you're going to figure out this length here, which is the difference between 40 and 80. So 80 minus 40. Then I have 1/2. 5 minus 3 is 2. So the dead weight. Also, if you notice here, because we have a price ceiling, notice producer surplus has been reduced. Producers used to get this whole area here. All right. And if I wanted to, let's call that area. Let me kind of clean this up and show you the effects of a ceiling without me using numbers, but just sort of the area here. Let's say I have a price ceiling and a floor. So I'm going to have my quantity on this axis, price on this axis, same supply, demand. This here is, let's say, 80. This here is 40. Then I know that this is a 3, and this is a 2, this is a 1. Is it 1? Plus, this is 5. 3, this is a 2, this is a 6. All right. If I wanted to, let's call these areas, okay. We're going to talk about the effects of a price ceiling. Let's call this area A, this one B, this one C. Call this D, E, and F. So to start off the problem, it would ask you, let's say, for example, what if there's a price ceiling of 70, right? So way up there's a $70. It's not violate ceiling, ask you dead weight losses, but if it asks you what consumer surplus is this triangle here. So without doing numbers, I'm just going to say that would be A plus B plus C. Producer surplus, on the other hand, is going to be the area above the supply curve to the price. All it means is this guy was willing and able to sell it for this much. He actually got this much, so he reaped that much surplus. And if we add them all up, we would have D plus E plus F. We have, I think I did a ceiling before on binding, because what it says is the price can be any price as long as it is below. If I made it what's going to be the surplus? For consumers use. So the definition is going to be underneath the curve all the way here. So after consumer surplus is going to be equal to A. And you can figure that out by taking 1/2 base times height. Then producer surplus afterwards is no longer going to be DEF, because we already said earlier This F here is going to become deadweight loss. So here, deadweight loss is equal to 0 when you have a non-binding floor. When you have a binding floor, deadweight loss is now going to be B plus F, that area. And producers, if you notice here, we'll say this is deadweight loss. Producers are going to keep their area E. They're going to keep their area D. And basically, they stole B away from consumers. And so they're going to have the area B. I don't ask you on the exam, but if you needed to, you could figure out this area in this rectangle plus this triangle. Right? So make sure you understand the difference between binding and non-binding, and you can calculate consumer surplus, producer surplus, and deadweight loss.